everyone, it's Bethany. Welcome back to my channel and welcome if you are joining for the very first time. In this video, I am still working on my Spring Showers quilt by Kimberbell. I'm having so much fun. This has been really fun and challenging for myself, and I really love that I'm just seeing it all come together. So in this video, we are going to be working on row 2 again, and I'm going to be doing the log cabin quilt block with you. It is so fun. So one thing that I really love about doing the quilt piecing in the hoop is the Starch pen. So I will be linking that down in the description box below. It is a game changer. It's so easy to use, it's so fun, and it just makes the whole quilt block come together so quickly. So I really hope you're excited for this video. Give this a thumbs up if you're excited to see how this comes together, and let's go ahead and start working on the next block. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to take my light cutaway stabilizer. I love it. I will place a link to all of the materials I'm using in that description box below the video. I am obsessed with this stabilizer. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It just does a wonderful job. So I'm happy to use it for this quilt. And I'm going to just place that in my mighty hoop. And that did a pretty darn good job. I'm going to tighten it down just a little bit, just to make sure it is good and tight. Actually, at the bottom, it's a little bit saggy, and I don't think I can remedy that. So let me just really quickly have a relatable moment, because we've all done it. We all rehoop stabilizer a time or two. There we go. Much better. It's always better just to fix it than worry about it. I don't want to panic when I'm stitching that it's not going to work. Okay. So I have my stabilizer all hooped, and I also have other things that I'm going to be using today. So I have some Kimberbell tape. This is going to be a game changer for this log cabin quilt block. I also have a rotary cutter for the end when we trim off our block. I have my tool set here. I love the Kimberbell scissors. They are just really great. It took me a while to invest in them because they're a little bit pricey, but I really have enjoyed them ever since purchasing them. I also have a piece of batting, so I have that ready to go, and then I have my fabric. Now, I did purchase the fabric kit. When you do purchase the fabric, it doesn't come pre-cut, so I wanted to let you know that as well. So what I did was I had a little cutting party for one. It was just me, but it was fun anyway. Put on your favorite show, go through all your fabric, pre-trim it, and I put mine in individual bags so that every time I had a chance to come down and quilt, I had my little bag ready for all the fabric needed for that particular block. So that's what you see here. In addition to that, on the back of each of my pieces, that one's a little hard to see because it's white, but on the back of each of my pieces, I did iron on some fusible backing. This is a beautiful product. They recommend using it because it does help reduce the puckering. I like it because not only does it reduce the puckering, but it makes the trimming process just beautiful and seamless. So that's why I choose to use it as well. So one thing about this block is I have done one of these before. It turns out beautiful. The only thing I'm going to do differently this time is I'm going to put all of my fabric, and I've already done that. I'm going to put it in order based on the order that it's going to call for in the hoop. So let me find let's see, there we go. So it will show you here in the embroidery instructions for the log cabin block. It's going to show you the number system for each of the fabric pieces. So I just went through and I grabbed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. And I put those all in order. So it just makes it easy. Once you get the machine rolling, you don't want to have to worry about going over here and trying to match which fabric you need or making sure you're on the right step. Just go ahead and put it in order. It will just make you so much more confident when you start this project. Okay, I think that's it. If I missed anything, I will sneak a whole list of materials in the description box of the video. That way you know exactly what I'm using. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to secure our batting to our stabilizer. And we'll do that by running the placement stitch for the batting. We'll place our batting down, and we will run the finishing stitch, or the tack down stitch, excuse me, trim off our batting, and then from there we're just going to get started quilting. This is so easy. I think that quilt blocks like this are one of the funnest things about this quilt. They're so fun, they're gratifying, and they just look so polished and beautiful in the end. So I hope you enjoy. Please give this a thumbs up if you're excited to see how this is done. It's so easy. You're going to love it. Okay, usually I would use a white thread, but I'm going to go ahead and use a gray thread so you can really see as I'm working today. And you shouldn't be able to ever see the thread in this project, in the final project, so we should be just fine. So I'm going to do the placement stitch for our batting. Okay, now you can see that placement stitch for the batting. That's just going to show me exactly where my batting needs to be placed on the hoop. So I'm going to go ahead, put that right over there, and do the tack down stitch. Okay, we have the tack down stitch securing our batting to the stabilizer. I'm going to grab some of my Kimberbell scissors and really quickly trim that excess batting away. This is what's going to allow us to remove the batting from our seams so that we won't have batting in our seams. That way it's not bulky. It will just stitch together our quilt blocks perfectly. It's really genius. The more I do the Kimberbell projects like this, these longer projects, they just think of everything. They really do. Okay, trimming off this last side. And we're ready to go. Okay, now we are going to do the placement stitch for our first part of the block. So this is going to get really fun and easy. Actually, before that, it's going to do a little grid. So let's do the grid first. It's going to show us kind of the whole idea of where this is going. So it's pretty much the secret to how this is all going to work. So we're going to stitch out the grid next. Okay, so here is the little grid that it placed on our batting, and this is kind of going to be our alignment tool for this whole block. Now, I thought it would be helpful. I've already done one, and this was in the cooler tones. We're going to be doing the warmer tones today, but I thought this might be helpful just to set up in the frame so that you can kind of see where we're going with this. So the first one we are going to do is we're going to do the center, and we have this really pretty orange dot fabric, and we're going to place that fabric side up or right side up, and I am going to definitely use tape for this. I find it just to be so much easier to use the tape instead of worrying about any shifting. So I'm going to tape that down right into the middle. Again, we're working in that very center piece first, just like this. So I'm going to make sure that that's covered there. And then we're going to return it to the machine, and it's going to place a stitch right here. Okay, we have a stitch right along the right side. So I am going to just shift my tape over a little here, just so I don't accidentally trim it. Okay, making sure that's still secure. I'm going to use my Kimberbell snips for this part. I just really like them for the applique part. And actually, this really isn't applique, but I like it for the trimming the fabric, which usually for me is applique. Quilt blocks are something that are very new to me. So I'm going to go ahead and trim my excess fabric, everything to the right side of that line there. And I accidentally trimmed my stitch there, but don't worry, it's just fine. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my next piece. Again, I have everything all ready to go, but I am going to place it right side down. So I'm going to have it flipped over, and I'm just going to place it right over that line. So I'm going to line up my fabric just like this. Let me bring the camera in. Okay, so you see this stitch line right here? I'm just going to center it, but I'm going to just line it up right on top of this piece of fabric. Centering it, just like that. Okay, and then I'll just tape that down. And it feels pretty secure, just one, but I'll just do two. Okay, then I'll return it to the machine. Okay, so then it placed a stitch right here, securing this second piece of fabric. I'm gonna take my tape off, and this is my favorite part. So I have this Starch pen. It's awesome. I'll link it down below. It's amazing. And I'm going to go ahead and open that up. And you can iron if you prefer to iron, but I'm just going to do the finger press. And I'm just going to run some of that starch. And it's like a starch water mixture. It tells you in the instructions when you buy the pen how to mix equal parts, or I can't even remember if it's equal parts, but it will tell you. So make sure you follow the directions on that. So I'm going to place a little bead there along my stitch. And I'm going to pull my fabric over and do a finger press. It's just so much quicker than ironing. And I'm going to pull that pretty tight. Not overly tight to where you can see your stitches or anything, but tight enough so it's nice and crisp. Grab a piece of tape. Tape that down so it's nice and secure. And I'll return that to my machine. Okay, now it placed a stitch along the bottom. So I'm going to remove the tape at the bottom here because now we're going to take our scissors and we are going to trim the bottom. Everything below that line we're going to trim. And I like to kind of do the first fabric instead of trying to go through all the fabric at once. I just do, in this case, all of that red fabric. And then I'll go through and do the white. Okay, just like that. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take our next piece of fabric, which in this case is this pretty fabric right here. Okay, and again, we're going to do right side down. So we're going to flip that over. We're going to center it at this, or center it between this line here. And we're going to just line it up so it covers that fabric, just like that. So lining it up, but also centering it. You don't want it all the way over here because our line is here. You want to center it on that line, but also have it directly on top of that other fabric. Okay, grabbing my tape, and you can just reuse the tape that you've been using. I like to kind of hoard it on the side of my hoop as I go. And just keep reusing it, but I like to make sure it's nice and secure. Okay, now it's going to do the next step. Put it onto the side. Grabbing my starch pen here. Just running it along that stitch. And it dries fairly quickly. You'll see it through the fabric in the meantime. You'll see it's kind of damp, but don't worry, it will dry. Actually, I'll just reuse. Okay, pulling, taping, and returning to the machine. Okay, our next step was a line right here. So I'm going to remove my tape. At this point, that middle piece is nice and secure. I'm going to go ahead and toss this because it was on the batting, which helps lose its sticky real quick. And then we are now going to trim everything from the left side of that stitch line. And after, so I've done obviously one before this. After you've done one, the steps and the trimming, everything just makes so much sense. It just goes so easy. And for this quilt, you will do a total of 3. So you'll do 2 in these warmer tones like we're doing today, and then 1 in the cooler tones. So 2 of these will go, the one I'm doing now and this one will be in row 2. And then I can't remember, it might be the last row that the third goes in. Okay. Perfect, looks great. Moving any extra thread. Now what we're going to do is grab our next piece of fabric, right side down, centering it on this stitch line, covering the fabric, You know the whole process at this point. Just tape this, like that, an extra one here. And we'll run our stitch. So ran that stitch to tack that piece down. Remove my tape because I'm going to then fold it over. But first grab my pen, run some little starch liquid right over that. Pull, press, tape. Oh, it looks so nice. Okay. And you guessed it, we're going to return it to the machine and do the next step. Okay, there we go. Now this time we're going to take our scissors and trim everything above that line. Okay, so this was our newest stitch line. And you can see it really taking shape. Looks really, really nice. Okay. Again, I just like to go one fabric at a time, just to keep it nice and crisp. Okay, go back to this. Okay, now we're going to grab our next piece. And we're going to center it on that stitch line. Oops. And cover the fabric. So lining up our fabric, centering on the stitch line. Okay. Oh, making sure I didn't shift it. Tape. Tape. And return to the machine. Okay, moving my tape, and I think you kind of understand exactly where we're going from here. So I'm going to go ahead and just finish up this quilt block because I think you get the steps at this point. They're all very repetitive. Grabbing our pen, folding over. And I'm just going to play some nice music for you, and I will finish this up, and I'll let you watch and follow along just so you can see visually how it takes shape, but it's just so easy. Okay, we are on to our very last piece. So hasn't this been really interesting to watch come together? It's just a lot of placing, folding, and trimming. Honestly, it's so fun to watch all of this just take shape, and I find it so relaxing. I get really excited when it's time to do a traditional quilt block in the hoop, and I really hope to do more of this because I just find it super interesting how it all just comes together, and it makes complete sense as you see the process, but my goodness, it's just so fascinating. Okay, so our very last piece, we have this piece here. Again, we're going to do right side down and cover and center, tape, and might have used all of my tape. Now, you do want to have these four ends pretty taped down because at the very end it's going to stitch around our quilt block. You'll see that in a minute, but make sure these stay taped down just so that they stay in place. Okay, removing that tape, grabbing this pen. It is worth every penny. I love this pen. Okay, we are done with that. Put it right back and fold, press. And this is the part I was saying, you want to make sure your final remaining pieces are taped really nice, because this last step, it's going to stitch the final quilt block. So it's just going to stitch a stitch all the way around your final square. So you want to make sure those pieces are nice and in place, just like you've had them doing the whole time as you've been, folding over and taping. Just make sure that they're ready to go for the final part. Okay, so while we are over at the embroidery machine, the last step is we're going to do our quilting on top of our hoop. Now, Kimberbell does a great job of explaining the steps on when to do the quilting and what steps you should do at what time. So go ahead and refer to their directions. What I did was I took my log cabin piece and file, and I took my background quilting, both of those files, into Embrilliance, and then I just ordered my steps accordingly. So I ordered them so that I did my tack down stitch, I did my placement stitch for the batting, then I had it skip to the entire quilt block for the log cabin, and then at the very end, I'm having it do the background quilting. So you can go ahead and just follow Kimberbell's directions on how to get that all set up, but the last step you will do is your background quilting so that it quilts beautifully on the top of your final quilt block. Okay, there is our final quilt block. It's a little hard to see the background quilting on camera, but in person it's so pretty. I really love it. Okay, so as a reminder, you do have to purchase the background quilting designs separate from the Kimberbell website, and then you download them from there. So they don't come with your quilt kit and stuff like that. So I'm going to take my tape off, and now I can unhoop and trim down my quilt block. Okay, so turning it completely over. Don't worry, I know it looks messy right now, but our trimming is going to square it up all nice and clean it up at the end. So I like to turn over and pull at my stabilizer just so that I can run my scissors along that little fold. And I just like to do this because, again, I've said this in all of my videos, I really like to just see where the blade of my scissors is at all times, especially at the very end, because can you imagine, I'm sure it's happened, and I'm sure it's probably going to happen to me eventually, but can you imagine cutting into your quilt block at the very end? that would be so disheartening. So I just do it this way because it makes me feel the best and most confident. And now I'm going to bring in my rotating cutting mat, my orange pop ruler. We're going to cut this down to 4.5 by 4.5 inches. So that is the ruler that I went ahead and grabbed. So placing my quilt block here, I actually like to turn mine over and do it this way because I can see it a little bit better. And placing my ruler around just like this, making sure it's lined up just like so. Okay, I think that looks nice. I grab my rotary cutter and I like to push outwards towards the ruler as I cut. There are multiple layers of fabric here, so if you need to take another little run at it, then go ahead, just to make sure you get through all the layers. I think I did that time. That one felt a lot better. And rotating. Go one more time. Okay, that one felt good too. And finally, the final edge. Okay, I think we're good. Taking my ruler off and perfect. Okay, oop, little thread there. There we go. So then it squares off so nicely, and that is our final quilt block. How cute. I love it that there's the pinks and oranges and yellows making up that warmer block. And then we have the teals and blues and greens making up that cooler block. I think they look really nice. So now what we'll do is we will just get them sewn together. So the warmer one will be on top, the cooler on bottom, and in the end they are going to look like this, I believe. So what I will do is I will just place them right sides together. So just double checking that I did this correct. Yes, I'm going to place it right sides together, making sure that those line up perfectly. Taking my time. I like to use the little clips, and I'm going to be running my stitch this way. So I'm going to place one on either side, just so it doesn't shift at all. I'm just double checking my alignment. Looks good. And I'll place one here. Okay, so I'm setting all of this to the side. Grab my sewing machine, and I will really quickly just sew these two blocks together. Okay, so I sewed those together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and now they are all ready to go. Taking my clips off, trimming any extra thread. This is so gratifying to get these sewn together. And then what I'll do, so pull them apart. Look how beautiful that looks. So nice. Okay, so those are all ready to go. Now what I'll do is on the back, I will open up my seam and I will sew them open. Or I'm sorry, not sew. I'm getting a little sleepy. I will iron them open. Okay, so that it'll look just like that on the back. It'll look so nice. It always looks so nice when you iron them open. But there we go. The 2 log cabin blocks are done. I think they're just so neat. I'm looking forward to doing the third too. Again, it's just so easy, especially after you've done 1 or 2. It's very, very easy to do. So that looks really good. It's really, really coming together. All right, so I showed you in the last video how this whole second row came together. It is so pretty. I love it. And more specifically, this is how the project we did today that's how that became a part of this entire row. So again, the block with the warmer tones is on the top, and then you have the block with, ooh, it's hard to hold up, but the block with the cooler tones is stitched right below, and it just looks so good. I love this. It's just coming together so neat and so pretty, and I can't believe it, but row 2 is done. So now in the next video, I'm going to be working on a block for row 3. I can't wait for you to see which one I'm choosing. And I'm just having so much fun. I'm hoping that you're enjoying this as well. I hope that if anything, I hope that you really, really can see that this is possible, because when I thought of quilting in the hoop, I thought, how in the world would I make a blanket with my embroidery machine? I just couldn't really wrap my head around it, but I hope that if you are kind of wondering that too, that I'm showing you that this is how you do it. This is how it's possible, and Kimberbell just does a beautiful job with their projects and files, and this has just been really fun. So I will see you in the next video. Be sure to give this a thumbs up if you enjoyed watching it, and I hope you have a really great day, and be sure to comment down below on what you guys are working on as well in your craft room, because I love to hear what everybody else is being inspired by right now. All right, I'll see you in the next video. See you later.